Welcome in, Irish fans. It is Sunday, September 1st. Welcome to September and welcome to Victory Sunday. I hope they both feel like great days. They feel pretty darn good for me. Um, Good game overall yesterday. Going into Kyle Field, College Station, tough environment. Everybody knew it. We've been talking about it all week. A lot of Notre Dame fans showed up. Looked like, 1,000 to 2,000 Notre Dame fans showed up, which was good to see. We always travel well. But man, did we need to get in there and get a win yesterday. And having a little bit of a home crowd there was certainly an advantage of some sort. All right. So, a few things to talk about today. I think the first thing on everybody's mind is the offensive line. We're also going to talk about a little later the NIU game coming up next weekend, next Saturday. I've got some obligations later this week, and I just don't have time to do a second podcast later this week. So we're going to go ahead and cover that at the end of this, and I'll make my score prediction. We'll talk a little bit about how the Irish, or what the Irish should do, how they should perform against a MAC team, which frankly I'm not sure is even in the picture or in the conversation for winning the MAC. But first, we're going to talk a little bit about yesterday's game. And what gets you worried? What gets you excited? And what do we really take away from what we saw? I think the first thing that we take away from what we saw is that our offensive line has some communication issues to work out. Sam Pendleton and Anthony Knapp need to get on the same page. And some of that's going to be coaching, and some of that's going to be trust, and some of that's going to be experience just playing with each other in practice. And the coaches, I'm sure, have watched a ton of what happened yesterday, and they're going to go after those mistakes that we had in practice yesterday. They're going to go after the communication problems and shift up the line, shift up the defensive look, have guys, move into blitz and then back out, and then blitz somebody else that didn't look like they were going to blitz. Send a safety. Send a different linebacker. So they're going to mix it up on those guys and really get those guys to communicate this week. Noise certainly always plays a factor in communication. So I don't want to take away completely from those two guys what they accomplished yesterday as two linemen who really hadn't, they'd certainly never started a game with each other before. Yesterday was Anthony Knapp's first game. It was his first college football game. And he held his own against Scourton. The best defensive pass rusher in the Big Ten last year. Knapp comes in as a freshman, and he held his own. One holding call. The line gave up 0 sacks. And I'm not saying that doesn't have as much to do with Riley Leonard as the quarterback as it does with the performance of those two. But Riley Leonard's not Superman, and he's not getting that done on his own. He's not giving up 0 sacks all by himself without a little bit of help against a defensive front, let's call it 9, because when we had 2 wideouts, they had 9 guys in the box most of the time. No safety help over the top. Maybe single high safety coverage over the top. But the second it looked like a run, everybody was in the box. Now, why we didn't run a little bit of play action on some of those kind of plays, I don't know. Like that's one thing that I am going to be confused about and will continue to be confused about with the play calling. Maybe they just didn't practice any play action. Maybe they thought, all right, well, we'll go in there and we'll just go with the fundamentals. Very, very little play action yesterday. I'm not sure that it would have made a whole lot of difference. The corners were not biting on the play action. And despite the fact that we had our wide receivers, in single coverage with their corners, we really weren't getting open. A little bit of miscommunication between the wide receivers and Riley Leonard, and we saw one yesterday between Jeremiah Love and Riley Leonard. Love broke to the inside of the end zone. Leonard threw to the outside shoulder. I think it was the right throw. It was the wrong read by Love. But again, that's communication. That's working together. That's learning how your quarterback operates, and that's a little bit of learning your position on the part of Jeremiah Love, who is not used to being lined up as a wide receiver and being utilized as a wide receiver in some of those circumstances. And you leave him back there because if you need to pull him back to block, you'd rather have him back there to block than one of our wide receivers who's probably great at a crack block, but you don't want a wide receiver going up against a defensive end or a linebacker. I want to give a little bit of credit. Actually, I want to give a whole lot of credit to Cooper Flanagan yesterday for a crack block. The 21-yard touchdown run, 29-yard touchdown run that Jeremiah Love made yesterday, if it weren't for a crack block, that run stopped short at 5 yards. And then Jeremiah Love did the rest. And man, that was a beautiful play. That was an absolutely beautiful play. Our line did everything it was supposed to do there. We got that one extra guy into the blocking scheme that we needed. Flanagan executed perfectly. Love executed perfectly. And we scored our second touchdown of the day. And again, I want to give the line credit for the Jardarian Price touchdown too. Not for the whole touchdown, certainly. Jardarian Price goes in, he makes one guy miss, and he's gone. And it was a thing of beauty. But the line set it up. The line set it up. Because if it's not a one-on-one situation for Jardarian Price, it's not a touchdown. Right? Football's a team sport. We all know that. And the running backs and the receivers and the quarterbacks and the defensive backs, the defense as a whole, those guys all get a lot of credit because you see the stats on their stat sheet for what they've done at the end of the day and what they've done right and what they've done really well. You see the sacks. You see the interceptions. You see the number of tackles. You see the number of pass breakups. All that shows up on the stat card. But what doesn't show up on the stat card is I executed my block correctly. So that number 4 could run 29 yards through 9 guys for a touchdown. And he basically went untouched. I want you to go back and watch that play. I want you to watch him squeeze through the line. I want you to see what Cooper Flanagan did there. He really kind of sealed the left edge. Helped out Anthony Knapp a little bit on that one. But man, Knapp had 2 guys to block. Flanagan comes in and lays down the block and just opens the gap just enough for Love to squeeze through. Go back and watch that play because it's a thing of beauty. And then slips through and does the rest. I mean, that was a great whole team play. Now, one of the things I'm surprised about from yesterday is the 198 total rushing yards. Because watching that game did not feel like a 198 rushing yard game. It felt like a passing game in a lot of ways, but more than anything, it just felt like a defensive standoff. Riley Leonard's longest rush yesterday was 11 yards. Love had the 29-yard rush, and then Jardarian Price had the 47-yard rush for the touchdown. Again, thing of beauty, right? That was a whole team effort. Everybody did their job on that play and executed well. Starting with the offensive line. So we can be hard on the offensive line for the missed blocks and the miscommunications and the inexperience, and that's not on them. That is a lack of playing together. That is a lack of knowing each other and knowing how to work with each other. Anthony Knapp and Sam Pendleton will get better as the year goes on. Now, I had my own frustrations with all of that yesterday. I found myself at some point during that game saying, where is Tosh Baker when we need him? I even sent a message to a friend. Said, man, I would love to see Tosh in the game for a few minutes. It's not what I said, but it's what I said. And it was the lack of experience, the ongoing lack of experience and the lack of communication between Pendleton and Knapp that was causing problems. So the coaches will work on that this week. And I think once we get to as we get to NIU and as we work and we play against NIU, they're going to continue to work on that. Because you can guarantee that NIU's watching the game film and they saw what happened there. And they're going to try to capitalize on the same mistakes. One game at a time. We always talk about one game at a time. I talk about one game at a time. Shut out the noise, right? Because there's a lot of noise out there. There's a ton of noise about we got to get ready for Louisville. We got to get ready for Purdue. We got to get ready for Southern Cal. Southern Cal's in November. Purdue's 2 weeks away. We got to get ready for NIU. NIU watched this game. You can guarantee every coach at NIU watched this game, especially the defensive coaches. And they are using that. They're using the mistakes that we made this week to try to exploit our defense and our offense next week. That's their job. That's what they're going to do. That's how they're going to prep their team this week. So how do we prep our team? By working on the communication and trying to overcome the mistakes that we made. Now, I don't know if anybody's watched NIU play a football game. The MAC is not known for being a well-covered, well-televised football team. And quite frankly, I could probably just look over here at my screen on the left and take a peek to see if they played. But the point that I'm trying to make is that it really doesn't matter if they've played a game yet or not. We just got to go do what we're supposed to go do. And the way we do that is by working on the offensive line communication and the communication between Riley Leonard and the receivers. And I think this coming week, we try to take away those opportunities for Leonard to run. We try to minimize those because we don't want to get him hurt playing against NIU. Or Miami, Ohio, or Navy, or Army. And those are the easy games on our schedule, right? We maybe take a few more chances against Purdue and Georgia Tech and Louisville. But these group of 5 conference teams that we're playing this year, we got to make sure we really protect our quarterback on those. So practice this week, expect it to be for the line, working on communication. Expect the coaches to send those guys exactly what they saw against A&M this week. It might be 1s on 2s. Might be ones-on-ones. Might be ones on a practice squad. I know the practice squad's been built, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's ones-on-ones, unless they're just really trying to keep guys from getting hurt. They could very well. We've got some injuries. They could very well say, we don't want anybody getting hurt. Stay away from the ones-on-ones. Speaking of injuries, we saw how aggressive our D-line is yesterday. I don't think they're out there intentionally trying to hurt anybody. But they're tough. And they're tough to go against. And I will say they're probably 4 of the most aggressive guys, 3 of the most aggressive guys. No, we'll say 4. We'll add Botello in there. 4 of the most aggressive guys in the country. And they will come after you and they will challenge you. And I expect them to continue to do that. I expect that against NIU. The other thing that I think really needs to get worked on this week is the communication, and I've already said it, but the communication between the quarterback and the wide receivers. Those guys need to get on the same page, and they will continue to get better as time goes on. Right? Young wide receiver core, transfer quarterback. We've got transfer receivers as well, but for the most part, very young wide receiver core. So those guys are going to have to work on communication this week as well. And the way we keep Leonard from going out and making a lot of big plays with his feet is, 1, in practice, we make him throw the ball. And I do think we get a practice squad out there for that. I think we see some practice squad corners. Because our practice squad ought to be as good as NIU's first string. Maybe a little better, maybe a little worse here and there. But pretty similar. And you start giving Leonard some opportunities to throw the ball in practice against guys that are wide open, and you start building trust between the wide receivers and the quarterback and the wide receivers, because trust works both ways, right? Defense is solid. Aiden Schuler had a pick yesterday. Christian Gray nearly had a pick yesterday. He played his heart out. He had that one pass interference call. I think that was a good play on his part. If he doesn't pull that guy down, he probably goes for 6. So why take the chance? He knew he was beat. Take the penalty. Move on. There were some bad penalties. There were a lot of bad penalties yesterday. A lot of bad penalties that were caused by being in a hostile environment against a really good team and being an aggressive ball team. And, as frustrating as those penalties were, as frustrating as the offsides penalties were, that was a product of the environment that we were in, as much as it was anything else. And they learned quickly. They stepped back. They toned down the aggression. They started playing smart. First game of the season, emotions are high. You got all that noise around you. You're going to make some mistakes like that. I think the one penalty I really didn't like yesterday was the offensive pass interference. Leonard has got to know not to throw that football when he's got when he's got receivers actively blocking downfield. He's got to know that that's going to get called. And that's going to get called every time. And I'm sure the coach pulled him over and had a conversation with him. I don't know if it was Coach Gino or if it was Coach Free or who it was, but one of those guys, I'm sure, pulled him aside and said, hey, look, you got receivers actively blocking downfield. You can't let the ball go. They're going to call that every time. We all remember when it happened to Brian Kelly. And it was like the first time they had ever called it. But they've been consistently calling it since then. We all remember the pick block play in the end zone. So, if you expect them to not call it, they're going to call it every time. You can't you can't have active blocks going on while the ball's in the air, and you can't just expect your blockers to let their blocks go and then try to pick them back up because you threw the ball or because you want to throw the ball. You just got to run. It's the only penalty that I have a problem with. I don't have a problem with the Anthony Knapp hold. I'd rather take a hold than a sack. 6-yard loss and a loss of down, in my mind, is worse than a 10-yard loss. And not losing the down. Just take the penalty. Now, the only other hold that I really don't like was the one that, pulled back a long run, but we scored right after that. So, we kind of wash our hands of that one. And I, not standing out vividly in my memory again, right? Because Jardarian Price scored right after that. I don't even remember who it was. I think it was Flanagan. But one of the things that I would like to see more this coming week is the use of our tight ends. Flanagan had a catch. I don't think Mitch Evans' number even ever got called. We bring some of the best tight ends in the country into this university, and we just didn't take advantage yesterday. Those are receiving threats that we have out there that we need to do a better job of utilizing. And maybe that's a trust thing still. But I would love to see a little bit of trust that you can throw the ball up for your tight end who's 6'6" and has a great vertical over a linebacker who's 6'3" or over a corner who's 6'1". Would love to see that. We didn't see any of that yesterday. We saw a little bit of challenging with Bo Collins. Bo Collins got in there and got it done for us a few times. They found a matchup that they liked there, and they exploited it a little bit. So I like that. I like that we've got a chippy, feisty wide receiver that wants to go in there and make a play for us, and has great hands. But we got a pair of, if not three, very good tight ends that are exactly the same way. So why are we not taking advantage of that matchup? Those matchups. Those are my questions about the offense from yesterday. About why, what we didn't do and why did we not do that differently. And if I got to sit down in a press conference with Coach Denbrock, that'd probably be the question I'd ask. Why didn't we take advantage of the tight end situation and the certainly obvious mismatches there? And why didn't we utilize play action a little bit more? All right, let's talk a little bit about the NIU game. I really don't have a whole lot to say about this game. The game, frankly, ought to be a blowout. If we go out there and we play with some passion, we play with some heart, and we go out to make a statement, and that's what we need to do. We need to go out there and we need to make a statement. We need to show the rest of the country that we're as good as Ole Miss beating up on Furman, as good as Alabama beating up on Western Kentucky, as good as Ohio State beating up on Akron, and all of the other teams yesterday in the top 10 that played an FCS team or a Mountain West or a Sun Belt or a MAC or you name it kind of team. And we need to go make the same statement in a home game in week 1. This past week's week 0. We get 2 byes. So we're not taking the week 0 bye that a lot of people take. We need to go out and we need to make that statement. We need to go out and put 63 points on the board. And the way that we do that is by giving Riley Leonard the opportunity to throw the ball downfield. Now, the other thing that does for Riley Leonard, right? I think everybody watches the game yesterday and they say, oh, well, yeah, Leonard's a great athlete. I'm certainly saying it. Leonard's a great athlete. But I don't think he's the best quarterback on our team. I think that title belongs to any one of the 3 quarterbacks sitting in the depth chart behind him. Probably CJ Carr, maybe Steve Angeli. Maybe Kenny Minchie. And based on what we've seen in actual games, the evidence is that in the way of a quarterback, in the way of a passing pocket quarterback, I believe Steve Angeli is a better quarterback than Riley Leonard. But he's not a better athlete. And he's not better at improvising. Riley Leonard played a football game yesterday, and you know who he reminded me of? He reminded me of Tim Tebow. I was having flashbacks to Tim Tebow triple option yesterday, lowering his shoulder and just bowling over linebackers. That's what I saw, right? The problem with that is it's great for us right now here at Notre Dame. But the problem with that is it doesn't contribute to a lengthy career in the NFL for Riley Leonard. So we need to show for him, for his sake, and for the sake of all of the quarterback recruits out there that are planning to come into Notre Dame, we need to show them that we can teach a transfer quarterback to throw the ball downfield to an open receiver and make some big plays through the air. Because that's what everybody looks for today. And I would like to see football go back to a little bit more of the lower your shoulder and knock somebody on their butt kind of game. But that's not reality. Not going to happen very often. You know, and the heck of the thing is like Leonard's a big guy, but I don't think he fits the mold of big NFL quarterback. He's just not big enough. He's not built like a tight end or a linebacker. And that's the kind of guy you got to be. Heck, I don't think he's built like Tim Tebow, who would have made a great running back or fullback. And frankly, was a real competitor and did all the right things in the NFL. And the fact that he's didn't stay an NFL quarterback is still mind-blowing to me because he just went out there and got it done. And that's exactly what Leonard did for us yesterday. That's why I'm comparing those two guys. That's why I'm looking at this and I'm saying, hey, we've got the same thing here, but we have got to set this young man up for success for the NFL. We've got to show that we got to show off what his arm can do. And I want to see him do that this week against NIU. I want to see him put the ball up in the air and hit Greathouse and Mitchell and, you know, Faison and everybody else, right? And Faison's out. He's hurt yesterday. I'm hoping that's not too serious, but you get the idea. That's the kind of production we need from him next week. That's how we get 63 to nothing. Because I think that's the statement we need to make. 63 to nothing. We need to go out there and show everybody that we can put up more points on a MAC team than Ohio State. Now they're gonna do everything they can to take advantage of the weaknesses that they saw this week. And that'll make it a little bit harder because Akron didn't know what any of Ohio State's weaknesses were going into this week's game. Neither did Western Kentucky about Alabama. Neither did Furman about Ole Miss. So putting up that high double-digit shutout is not going to be quite as easy. But we kept what everybody said was going to be one of the best offenses in the country to 13 points yesterday. So we sure as heck ought to be able to do the same thing to NIU. I'd like to see Howard Cross have 3 or 4 sacks. I'd like to see Riley Mills have 3 or 4 sacks. I'd like to see Jordan Botello have 3 or 4 sacks. Heck, we put the 3 of those guys together, we get 9. That'd be a great game defensively. We probably won't get that. I don't think they'll throw the ball that often if that starts to happen. But this is a team that can limit yardage, can play well against the run, and can limit the number of mistakes that we make. And I think we just need to keep the first string in there and play them hard. And make that put the punctuation, put the dot on the exclamation point that we made yesterday. This is a great football team. And this coming Saturday, it needs to go prove it. So again, I'm saying 63-0. I think that should be the goal. I think that should be the minimum of the goal. No points allowed. No field goals. And we'll see how the rest of the season pans out after that. Once again, I want to reiterate, I think stats can be incredibly deceiving. That's unfortunately what everybody judges football on these days. Everybody thinks they know statistics. They'll look at this game yesterday and they'll say, oh, well, we had 200 rushing yards, 198 rushing yards. Sure as heck didn't feel like it if you go back and watch the game. And the heck of the thing is, everybody watched this game. Everybody watched this game. And nobody's going to go and watch Notre Dame versus NIU. So we made a statement yesterday. We got to make a statement on the stat card on Saturday. It's just unfortunately how college sports is today. That's all I've got for this week. I love y'all. Keep looking up. Go Irish. Beat NIU. See you next Sunday.